Hi, I'm Farmer Gil.
And I'm Farmer Chris. This is part 2 of our discussion with Kevin Crockett, radio personality and host of the morning show on 100.7 LEV.
In this episode, we talk to Kevin about the role of community in radio and farming, Kevin's radio heroes, and how to grow apples. It's harder than it sounds. Welcome to Farmcast.
Really,
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So where do you go from here, man? You've got a legacy spot here with Johnson's Corner Farm. You obviously are continuing to grow. You know, it's funny when you guys said you were going to start building this, I was like, oh, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer to build this space and offer that space. I guess my question to you, Gil, would be kind of two-part here then. For your spot right here, right now, where would you kind of like to see that go? And do you feel like, I come back to my background in my career in radio, that I feel like the thing that's missing is we are a content space. As much as we are a radio station, you can find us on 100.7 LEV, by the way. Download the LEV app if you'd like to. But we are a content space, so we need to be making sure that we're doing the best that we can in a space of content. When it comes to farming, do you feel like in general there's something that is kind of missing in that space that needs to be harnessed and embraced and could be a good push going forward?
I think, oh man, that's a good question. As far as missing in the space, I think a lot of farmers that are successful right now kind of get it. And I don't think there's necessarily anything drastically missing, because I think, a lot of farmers are out there, they're doing everything they can to make ends meet. But the things that we focus on here, like the main thing we talk about all the time is hospitality and creating this memorable family experience for people out on the farm. And hospitality looks so different in pretty much every farm, because we were talking to a cranberry farmer who wholesales all his stuff. He's not really open to the general public. And he was even talking about how he brings hospitality on to his farm and how, just being nice to people, making their experience easier, reducing friction points goes a long way. So, I think farmers are getting that now, and I see a lot more doing it. We can always get better at it, and we always try to do it. But I think, hospitality and just being able to be like transparent in your business, and I think it means a lot to people, and giving them like connection. Like, I know, like, a lot of people, like when you go somewhere and you especially bring your kids and your family there, you want to feel some sort of connection to the business, whether it's, the owners are present, or, the staff there, or just, something that makes it feel like comfortable and like feels like home. And I think we really try to do that here. And it's funny when, people come in and they will assume like another manager is a Johnson or something. It's a cool compliment to them, because like, they see how, people move and our staff moves and operates here, and people assume they're an owner, which I think is cool. And, it's, my dad's always around. We're always around. Chris is always around. So it's cool that, we are very involved in the business. So back to your question, as far as like what's missing in the farm space or can be added to the farm space, I don't think it's like anything super specific, but like broadly, like just focusing on hospitality and like giving the customer what they want, because some people get stuck in their ways of doing things.
Sure.
It's in any industry. It's not like farming exclusive. So I think, it's a trap a lot of people fall in. Sometimes, I'll get in a rut. I'm not perfect, but I think it's just, listening to your customer. When people like complain about stuff or write a review, I think a lot of people's like knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, they're wrong. But, one of our managers here, Frank, he's always like, wait a second, what if what they're saying is true? And then you like calm down a little bit, breathe, receive this feedback, and then do something about it. Don't get like so defensive. So
A lot of
I don't know if I
times,
answered
too-
your question.
You did. No, I thought that was great. Yeah.
A lot of times too, in those harsh reviews, there's the circumstances of it might be overblown, but there usually is a kernel of truth somewhere in there, and I think that's what Frank's really good at, sort of sifting out, kind of the wheat from the chaff, right?
It's hard though when, like, for me, being like the owner, like how am I not supposed to take this super personal?
I'm one of those people that if there's 100 people in a room and 99 people have something nice to say, and one person's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, why?
Yeah.
Why?
So that's why I have my sister Olivia. She handles all that stuff
Yeah,
because
she's
I know she has thicker skin than me, and I'm like, Liv, you got this. If there's anything I need to know about, please let me know. But I don't want to know don't.
Yeah.
If they're on there like trashing me, like that's not, that's negative energy. I don't need that.
Sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just have her take care of it. And I sleep fairly well at night.
To build on that question, I think, and this is going back to education, I think educating the general public on what farmers do is another thing that really all farmers are trying to build out. I mean, all the farmers we've interviewed, it's come up, like how you educate your customer base about the produce or the beef or whatever it is that you're creating or you're offering. And, it really does fall back on the farmer, him or herself, to do a lot of that educating. Because a lot of the info that the general public has is either very shallow or it's like hyper generalized, where they take these ideas and they just sort of apply them to agriculture in general. So we have what I think farmers are doing well now, and what we're kind of working at with this podcast too, is sort of this more bottom up, sort of grassroots approach to educating the public about crops, about beef, about what we actually even do. Because, like the perception that the general public has about farmers is we stick seeds in the ground and then we look out at the land and the sun rises and all is good and we close our eyes, right? And then there's just crops flying out of the ground and they're all perfect, right? All
7 different kinds of strawberries
Yeah,
just
right.
waiting to be picked.
We were joking the other day that, right, we need like a robotic hand that lifts up like a perfect quart of strawberries straight out of the row, right? So a lot of it is trying to educate people that, what produce is, right? What it is we're actually doing out in the fields every day. There's farmers doing it all over too. That's the cool thing. It is this very grassroots kind of bottom up approach.
So that's your content right there. I mean, you're going to need to go out and start doing stuff anyway. So if what we're talking, one of the questions that I was going to have for you, I don't know how much time you have as
we have
farmers here.
In this weather.
In this
I have
weather,
all the time in the world.
right, so we'll do 2 episodes. Is just listen. If you're in the height of, let's say it's strawberries, you're in the height of strawberry season right now. Here's where it goes. That's your content right there. You already need to be outside. Put a microphone on. Okay.
Yeah.
Get, maybe the evolution for you guys now, as you said, you've hired somebody. I'm not going to tell you to spend your money, but you've hired somebody to edit this show. Have somebody come, just follow you out there. You're already out there. You're already doing the work.
Yeah.
You have to be out there anyway. Have somebody come out, mic yourself up, have them edit that down into something shorter and sweeter, and your content can kind of just continue to evolve and grow, if you will. And then that just enhances things like the podcast, like your brand, all those things. So that would be the other thing. Listen, you Chris, you mentioned kind of listening to what the other farmers have already said in this is the third or fourth?
Fourth.
This is 4. So that means there's 3 farmers and an idiot that you've talked to this point. And those 3 farmers all kind of shared the same thing. So that should say a lot to the both of you about, with the question coming back to, where does your business on this farm, on this 110 acres go? You're getting expertise from people who know the business like you do, can say things that you comprehend and understand. How are you going to take those things and be the ones to bring it to a public light and make it your own and make it content? So that's really the big thing for me. My job is to talk. I think I'm a much better listener than I am a talker. So
You're pretty good at talking.
I could probably keep, if we had to go on, I said if the weather wasn't cooperating, we can go on and on and on. That's not.
Yeah, I think back to what you're saying about like educating the public. Like that's what we were talking with other people. I think when it first like dawned on me, or like I first thought about like, okay, it's now like our responsibility as farmers to educate people. I got like a little like defensive about it because people assume things that aren't true. And I'm like, oh, what the heck? Like, I shouldn't have to go do this. Like, why are people assuming, we're
Yeah, but I think
killing
that
the earth and killing the environment because of how we farm? But I think that's not the right way of thinking it, because I think farming is not unique in the way of people assuming it's something that it's not. Like, I think there's other industries that deal with the same thing.
100%. And it bothers you because you care.
Yeah.
That's why it bothers you. It bothers you because you care and you know that you're doing what you are. So you know the ins and outs of this. Well, actually, I'll come back to this. One of the funniest conversations that we had was, I'm trying to remember if it was your second gender reveal or third gender reveal, and you had everybody out up, at your house.
Oh,
and
yeah.
we're standing there, and you've got like this kind of, you can edit this if you want to, but like almost look pissed off about something that we were talking about. And so I came up to you to talk about it, and you gave me a good 5 minutes on apples. You had just come from, now correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm speaking out of turn, correct me, but basically there is like so aside of farmers that I didn't know is that there is like an apple convention, basically, that I could say, okay, so this is all reminiscent to you?
It was probably the Hershey Fruit and Vegetable Convention.
Okay, so
which is awesome.
I started bringing up, I don't want to, I don't even know if I'm speaking out of turn bringing up a particular apple, because I don't know where like your affiliation with that apple group is, but there are apple groups that I learned. And you just seemed, which is not something that I would expect, but it seems like the Apple convention maybe didn't go exactly how you thought it would. And that was bothering you on your beautiful farm. Like, that just goes to show how much you care about your business. Like, this is your baby. This is your baby. This is like what happens with this from here. I
think I'm remembering. What did it have to do with Honeycrisp?
It had to do with Honeycrisp.
Yeah.
I didn't want to say in particular.
No, it's okay. I'll do my little rant. So Honeycrisp apples are great. They are. Everyone eats them. Everyone likes them. Awesome. But not everyone grows them, and there's a reason why people don't grow them. Is because they're extremely difficult to grow. There's farmers that have Honeycrisp in New Jersey, and I've talked to them. And I've seen their trees, and they always look like they're about to die. So if you think about it from a farming standpoint, growing that Honeycrisp variety is going to cost you just as much as, let's say, growing Gala apples or Red Delicious apples or another type of apple. It costs you the same. So, you sell Honeycrisp for more money, but you're not going to make up that difference because the poundage is so much less.
I swear to you, this is literally the conversation we were having. But it was so brand new, like that. The wound hadn't healed from whatever you experienced.
No.
I think I remember having my hands in my pockets, and you finished, and I was just like, "Oh, damn." Okay. Well,
so I like. A lot of people are ripping out Honeycrisp and replacing them for other varieties because Honeycrisp is very difficult to grow, especially in our area. But
so to go back to Gender Reveal Day, can you tell everybody how you revealed the genders?
Oh, yeah. I launched rockets in our yard, and we put the color powder in the rocket, and then when the rocket goes poof up way high in the sky, it lets the color out. And for me, fortunately, it's always been blue. 3 times in a row, I have 3 boys.
It is a fun way to do a gender reveal.
Yeah,
it is fun.
It was, and we won't be doing any more gender reveals. I don't know if you got that news.
I also know that I won't be doing any more gender reveals. I'm
Nor will
comfortable.
I.
Yes.
And we're done.
Yeah.
Next topic.
Yeah.
But,
stay tuned for the vasectomy podcast coming to you next. It's brought to you by.
But apples. I'm passionate about apples. See the pivoting, pivot apples, because apples is probably our most labor-intensive crop that we have here.
So why is that?
Because we are in the apple orchard almost, 365 days out of the year. I would say 200 days out of the year at least. there's someone in the apple orchard doing something, some sort of job. And it takes so much to get that apple hanging on that tree looking beautiful for people to come out and pick in September and October. And it just means a lot when that apple is able to hang and get there and then hopefully come across the scale and people pay for it at the end of the day. But
and it's
a lot
all that
goes into
work
it.
goes into 6 weeks, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Roughly
The
6
season is
weeks,
very
September
short.
to October.
Yeah. So we're out there in the winter. We pretty much start in February, start pruning. Because every apple tree needs to get pruned every year. And depending on the variety and the trellis style of
What is that? The trellis style.
So in the apple orchard, you have a trellis, and that is it's basically like big posts put down the row of apples, and in those posts we run wire through, and then we clip the trees to the wire. So apple trees, especially when they have fruit on them,
Will lean.
well, yeah, they'll lean one way,
Okay.
the wind comes, they'll break. So the wire helps support the branches, or helps support the
Which is obviously a labor-intensive thing to do if you've got.
setting up the trellis is yeah. And we have 2 different trellis styles out there right now. An older one, the thought process behind that trellis style was keep the trees short and wide, plant the trees further apart to keep the fruit closer to the ground. That trellis style is not really done too much anymore. Now, the style that everyone's moved to is called high density spindle method, where it's the exact opposite. It's keep the trees, plant them like 2 feet apart from each other, keep them super skinny and grow them straight up. So it's a lot more expensive. It's a massive investment up front, but you get to a full crop of apples in about 2 years less time than you do in the old one.
Yeah,
And they're a lot easier to prune. So the old trellis method, when you prune a tree, you'd probably make, I would say, 100 to maybe 200 cuts per tree.
Wow.
And the new method, you're probably making, 25.
Wow.
Upwards of
that's
25.
A huge
and, you know,
difference.
there's it can go either way, but yeah, it's way easier. And as far as when you're pruning, your decision making on which branch to cut is a lot easier.
And in terms of picking too, for customers, it's so much easier to pick out of the new system than the old one.
Mm-hmm.
The old one got, you almost had to look inside the tree. Now it's like you see
They're there.
every apple that's on the tree.
Yeah. So yeah, from pruning, and then once they get into bloom, then it's like we're all worried about frost, because you can have an epic bloom and you get a couple nights of frost and they're all going to die. And then after you get through frost, then you're worried about thinning the apples, because an apple tree is going to want to make way too much fruit every year. So if you let that apple tree hang all that fruit on there, a lot of things can happen. You'll break branches because it's too much weight. You'll have a lot of like fungus and rot in the cluster of apples. Because, if you think about it, like when apples hang on the tree, there, in a cluster, there's going to be like 5 of them there. Moisture will build up on the inside there, and air can't get there. It'll sit wet, water, and then all 5 will rot. So we have to go through and knock them all off. So we probably knock off like 80% of the fruit that the tree wants to grow.
Wow.
So another thing, which this always like blows my mind, is like, all right, let's say you do let an apple tree overcrop one year. The following year, it's not really going to produce fruit. It's not going to have many blooms, because the tree remembers, last year I struggled to hold all this weight on my branches, so I'm not going to grow fruit this year. I'm going to grow wood. So that's called biannual bloom. So apple trees out in the wild, wherever they are, I think South America has some wild apple trees.
You would know better than I would.
Some people have them like in their yard, like crab apples or whatever. Like if you really paid attention to it, those ones that aren't thinned and pruned, they're only going to hang a crop every other year. So we're always fighting the biannual bloom. And the way you fight it is through pruning and thinning, and don't let the tree overcrop.
That's interesting.
Some varieties want a biannual bloom more than others, but Yeah, it's a constant battle. It's like super interesting, and that's the same with like peach trees. A lot of fruit trees, they'll want to biannual bloom, so you got to thin
the
them.
pear tree in my yard.
Yeah, yeah.
Biannual.
So
Yeah.
like from a tree standpoint, that's great. Fruit one year, wood the next. Fruit, wood. But from the farming standpoint, and you gotta get some income from this
Sure.
land, you need a crop every year. So
And then the other
it-
element, can you talk about wiring the branches?
yeah. So like holding them down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that has to do. So you hold them down because it holds fruit better. So depending on the angle of the branch, like if the branch is going like straight up and it holds the fruit, that branch is just gonna kind of like flop
Sure.
like that. Like think about like you always want them on like this angle because it will hold more. It'll hold fruit better.
Yeah.
So we put like you can like use wires to like a branch is coming up straight. We'll go through with these little wires, wire here, wire to the trellis wire, and just pull it down a little bit.
So
it's
like super labor intensive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
certain
guys are
times a
literally
year.
walking
Yeah. If
through
you
with
got,
little
you have to do that
wires,
for however many trees you have.
Yeah. And then you got to go take them off. So it's like, and it's crazy. So we'll have our guys go down the rows, and they have it all on like their belts, like all these wires. It looks crazy, but it's what you got to do. And
well, I have a greater appreciation for apples now.
Yeah. So there's just so much more. There's disease.
What's the easiest thing? Okay, somebody's got a little bit of land. They're like,
okay.
I want to take a little time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to put something down. Because obviously, when you're talking about all these different, you're on a farm, so you're growing a bunch of different stuff. And a day like today could be hellish because it might be great for one crop, not so great for another. What's I don't want to say set it and forget it because I think that takes away from the process. But what is if I were starting a farm tomorrow and wanted some success, you would suggest growing
Sunflowers.
sunflowers. Okay.
They are, because they don't really have like the diseases that you got to stay on top of. They don't have like a edible fruit. Like they're sunflower seeds.
Sure.
But you're not like looking to go sell this flower and they're gonna take a bite out of it raw.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like with sunflowers, the things you're
Never
gonna
know.
have to worry about is gonna be deer and squirrels. If you can keep deer and squirrels out of them, and you have and like the soil that sunflowers can grow in is like a pretty wide array of soil. Like there's some crops, like for instance, like blueberries, like you can't plant blueberries in a bunch of different places. Their soil is like very specific. So, but sunflowers, I could really grow them anywhere on the farm. And certain varieties there are thousands of varieties of sunflowers, thousands.
I thought they were just sunflowers.
No. And so it
No.
depends on what you want to do with the sunflower, right? So like the type of sunflower that they use for like sunflower seeds is one variety. You want like a really, really tall flower, the giant mammoth ones. You want like short ones where you get, that nice Instagram picture frolicking through the field and everything. That's a different one. And then there's like sunflowers that come up one flower, some come up bunch of flowers.
The clusters are really cool.
Yeah,
Like
different
7.
colors.
Yeah, you want to frolic with those.
Yeah, and
they're
like
good
the
frolicking.
Frolicable.
the ones that you buy like in in a bouquet, like you see, and they have the nice stems and everything, and the heads like tight like that. Those ones are very expensive for seeds.
Tons
but-
of different ones.
So this kind of comes back to one of my original points of just wanting to talk to somebody who is passionate about what they do, because I said it to you when you were talking about strawberries earlier, and both of you have alluded to things about the process of working on a farm that just excite you, even if as much as every day might be one thing or another, might be a good day or a bad day. There's a reason why you're passionate about apples. There's a reason why you're passionate about strawberries and sunflowers and all of those things. And I think that's a huge credit to you both. And that, coming back to the point of farmers in general, if that's kind of the philosophy and you're good at hospitality, sounds like you can have a pretty successful spot.
Yeah.
If you're trying to get all that done.
Yeah, it's it's a lot of work, and like you said, you got to like love what you're doing, but I'd say this is the least boring place to work.
Mm-hmm.
Because like we're not doing like every day it's something different. Like there's like weeks you're doing this, weeks you're doing that, but it's always changing. And I'm not doing the same thing throughout the whole year. You know, like right now we're in strawberry season, we're doing a lot of planting, and, you know, in the summer it's harvest. We're still doing some planting. And then once we get into the fall, it's pumpkins. And then we hang Christmas lights for our Christmas
a lot
program.
of Christmas lights.
Yeah, tons.
And that's like,
It's a lot of Christmas
it's a
lights.
lot of fun hanging lights for 3 weeks. And then anything longer than that, it's
yeah.
tough.
And then
But-
in the winter, we get this kind of rest period. So, like, one of the things I've loved about working here is that, yeah, it's super dynamic. You're always doing something new. But then there's this natural seasonality to it. You know, it's like you're working hard, and then there's this rest period, and you're working hard. So it feels natural. You know, it feels like what people should be doing.
You know, it's funny because you mentioned being a teacher before, because I've always said that when the conversation comes to like how fast it feels like time goes now that we're older and we all have kids and you're doing all of their things, it did feel like the time between getting out of school, just being an adult, to the time that I had kids, that window felt like it was a very long window. And I always attributed that to, like, there was the school year, right? You would go to school for a stretch of time, you'd have Thanksgiving break. Then you go to school for a stretch, then there was Christmas break. And then you'd go to school, and there would be all these breaks, and then there was summer, and you would look forward to that, and you were like, oh my gosh, summer is finally here. And now as an adult working, you know, a regular job, and there's not that school year, and there's not like that, and not to say that a school year doesn't, you know, that gap obviously is filled with time, but just that memory bank in your head of that time and ebb and flow. And now it feels like time is just one singular thing. So I actually can very much appreciate that, Chris, that idea of just like, you go, it's an ebb and flow. You kind of do what you got to do, and then you got a little time to come back down and do what you got, versus feeling like you're constantly, like you're looking at the calendar and holy cow, it's already halfway through May and it feels like it was just February. So I definitely get that.
Yeah, and having the winter is like a great time of like reflection on the previous year, and it makes it the hard times better. You know, like it's all relative. Like the winter is so great, and it's such an awesome time to spend with the family because we make all these sacrifices through the year of not being with them, of work, you know, getting up early, staying late, doing all this stuff. That's what makes, you know, that time of the year awesome. Like if I had that downtime all year round, I would go insane.
Sure.
Sometimes I get a little squirrely towards the end of the winter, but for a majority of it, I'm like, this is awesome because of what we went through to get there.
Oh yeah,
But the season, it's super unique, and I try my best not to take it for granted, because when I'm chilling in the winter and all my friends are still going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Kev, I want to pivot. Did you like that? I used your term. I
there
want
you
to
go.
pivot. So you talked about storytelling and radio. Can you, because as an English teacher, I'm always interested in story and narrative. Can you tell us some of your influences, either in story in general, narrative in general, or specifically in radio? Fill us in on your inspirations.
So, you know, I don't think there's a better radio show out there than Preston and Steve. So I go way back to even Y100 with them. They were the first. That was the first time, I think. And I don't know that I played football in college and thought I honestly wanted to coach. Thought like maybe I could go and coach somewhere. So I was going to try to pursue a master's and be a grad assistant somewhere and try to do all that. Our football program got dropped after my senior year, so that process kind of got dropped with it. And I wanted to go then to either journalism or radio. I thought was a possibility, and try to do sports and talk about sports. And fortunately, through my time in football, had, you know, a networking situation where it was like, hey, I've got a guy that, you know, is willing to start. So I started, I was making $7 an hour out of college, trying to start at the radio station, doing promotions, teaching myself all this stuff, like working an event, staying, driving an ice cream truck with an axle that I'm sure was broken on 95 around Philly, but would come back and started teaching myself. I would go in the production room and just close the door and just be like, try to hit as many buttons as I could that I didn't think would affect anything on air. And that's pretty much how I started. It got to a point where, honestly, the reason I got my start in radio was because, yes, the talent was there. I would do what are called air checks, which is basically like I would talk over, like take a song, talk over it just to give you the idea of what it would sound like on the radio, and then would go and send it to my bosses. Really, the biggest issue we had was we kept having stations go off the air overnight, or logs wouldn't get merged overnight. So they basically needed a body. They needed a body in the building for if overnight one of these things went off. And I was like, I'll work overnights. So let me go on the air. Let me start to build that. And so they were like, okay, great. So that's what I did. I started working overnights, Fridays and Saturday nights, which is really hard when you're 22, 23, and all your friends are out. And I would basically be coming from an event, running the production from an event, and then going to do my on-air show. So my Friday and Saturday nights for my first probably 18 months, 2 years out of college that was it. That was what I was doing. But back to your question, I think Preston and Steve forever have done a show where you can tell they all prep their show, which I think is important. I think if you just go in, there's a phrase in radio called rip and read, where you can just go to the usual, there's prep sites and they'll have stuff for you, and you can just go in and we try to plan as much of our show as we can the day before. We have like a main topic at 7:10 every day. We try to prep that the day before, try to post it out on social media, or sweepers that you hear, ours are 100.7 LEV. We'll do something in and out of those. Like those are called sweepers when you're listening to the radio, just to try to get ahead on our show. And I don't think anybody I'm not even talking about around here. I think in the business does a better job of, one, preparing a show than they do. Two, they've been together for so long. And three, coming back to that communal impact, they do so much in the community, way better. There's not even a close second. They run away with that. And so when they were on Y100, and it was, I of course would laugh at them being goofy. One of the things that hit me was like, they do their blood drive, they do their food drive, they do all of these things that cost you nothing more than time. You want to donate to their cause, that's great. If you want to donate to the food drive, amazing. I think we all, at the bare minimum, you hope that you're fortunate enough that at the very least you can come over with a couple of cans and give it to them. They don't ask for a whole lot from a lot of people, but they give so much of their time. Yeah. I can give you blood. I can give you time. I can give you awareness. I can do all those things. And that's the communal thing that I think I learned very early from a show like that. Like, it's cool to go on there and talk to cool guests. And I've had the opportunity to talk to some really cool people and have some really cool stories. All of my favorite stories in radio have nothing to do with any of that. I shave my head every year for St. Baldrick's Childhood Cancer Research. I'll be doing that again next month. It's shooting free throws at the Boys and Girls Club of Bethlehem for an hour, and for every shot I made was $1 that helped them redo their basketball courts outside before the school year let out. It's those things that, like, if we in radio that's our superpower.
Yeah.
You could be a great show. You could have great talent. Our superpower is to be local in a world where and I'm not knocking anybody's game. If you're syndicated somewhere, there's a reason. You're probably uber talented. That's fine. The one thing that's going to keep us afloat is, how are you impacting the people who are listening to you every day? And if you can do that through story, we saw a story that went viral of a woman who just broke her wrist because she had a spider in her car, drove off the road, broke her wrist. So that was our topic this morning, which is kind of like, how did a bug? But what you do is you kind of prepare the show ahead of time. Mine was actually, I choked on a bee once. I had a bee fly down the straw of my water bottle. This is true. You remember your old school, like, Little League water bottles with like it actually had like a little ring, a little plastic cap that went on top.
Yeah.
The cat wasn't on there. A bee flew down there, and I'm choking on a bee. So what we deduced from this situation was, first of all, the doctor said, like, if you got stung, it didn't sting me. If you got stung, I can't promise that would have ended well. Basically, what got narrowed down to was the bee was choking me. I was suffocating the bee in my throat, and the bee just went first. Because I remember coughing it out, and the first thing my mom was like, "Where's the stinger? Where's the stinger? Where's the stinger?"
So
and the stinger was still in there.
You coughed them out?
got it.
How old
Yeah,
were you?
11 or 12. I was cutting the grass. Back to mowing the grass in this thing. It almost killed me.
So maybe you wouldn't be a good farmer.
Maybe I would. No, maybe not. Not so much. Not so much.
That's
wild.
Yeah.
I got stung in the face by a bee
Yeah, you
last
did.
week. Just
They're
terrible.
you have to be cool
they're
about
good
it, especially
workers.
around the kids, because you don't want to scare the kids, because they're like, and you're like, don't worry, it's not going to bother. But in the back of your mind, you're like, I will sucker punch a bee right now. If
oh
this thing
my
gets
gosh.
close.
I'm like imagining a bee stuck in my throat.
But to your point in storytelling, that is a story that I feel like we'll get texts and calls on. We ended up having, so to go to storytelling, we had a woman call in who said her daughter had just gotten her driver's license and they're driving home and a hawk drops like a mangled, that she's like, I don't even know what it was, but on the windshield of the car driving home the day she got her license, a bird dropped another animal on top of her windshield, and they were just like, so that's that's the other part of it, is if you have a community, like we have callers who, one of the things I'll always say is, like, especially if you listen to sports radio, there's callers, and I know there's people that sometimes get tired because they hear the same call, but those callers are a part of the show. They're a part of that community. And so if you can kind of build that, I've been fortunate to be with Selena now. It'll be 8 years in August. And, you just, podcast rule number one,
on
no
the radio.
background noises.
Oh,
So-
man.
That's hilarious. What were you saying before that? I got distracted by the radio call.
I was just talking about
Oh,
the lady who had
storytelling.
just storytelling. Yeah.
Yeah, and this is really cool too, because talking to Danielle Wainwright the other week, it really, there are some extreme similarities between radio and farming. We're looking to like almost like hyper localize the market.
Yeah.
It's like we're niching down into the people that make your radio or our farm what it is, and it's not just us as the farm. It's the farm coupled with the people who come here all
Sure.
the time, the community that becomes part of the farm.
100%.
Yeah.
I don't know who's supposed to wrap this podcast up, because we've kind of gone back and forth on who's hosting and
We
who's
have,
instructing.
but that's
I
okay.
know,
But
it's
we can. I
been
feel like we're kind of
strange.
circling the conclusion right now.
Yes.
Yeah, but
This is a good question. How do you conclude your podcast? Like,
Yeah.
do you have a technique for doing this that I can then use immediately?
One thing that I'll do in this podcast is a little bit different, is I'll always try to have a like a point or something that someone said that I can kind of come back to. If you make like a little quip or a little pun
Yeah.
or something to that effect, I'll try to, I was talking to, prime examples, I was talking to a realtor group the other day, and one of the things that they said is people are, why you should use a realtor is, one of the questions that they get asked all the time is like, okay, well, I want all this space, but is this going to be a cornfield or a warehouse in 5 years? And they're like, we can't really tell you all those answers, but I can tell you what I know and who I know and how I know and when we would get that information and the relationships that we have that can give you that answer. So I wrapped it up with that. I said, some days you're going to get a cornfield and some days you're going to get a warehouse.
Yeah.
Just depends on which one you want and which one's going to work out for you. So typically that's the way that I'll try
I
to.
think a lot of
Yeah.
people think they want to live next to a cornfield, but actually would probably be more suited next to a warehouse.
It's a big issue in the Lehigh Valley right now. It might be the next podcast. So, we could talk about it next time. But
Oh,
that's
funny.
Well, I can't remember any quips. I want to pivot to the conclusion. How about that
good-
one?
there we go.
Pivoting to the conclusion.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
Yeah.
Maybe we can end it when we all laugh and fade away.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the one.
That's it.
That's it.
All right, well,
Kev,
thanks for
thanks
coming
for
out,
coming
Kev.
out.
This is awesome. I learned a lot.
I did
honestly.
too.
And I love it because I feel like we can always get better.
I think
It's awesome.
prep, and honestly, for me, I think I just need to be more comfortable, because I like when I get nervous, I'm like having a different conversation in my head than what's coming out, and I'm like, what do I say? When do I
Yeah.
say it?
Sure,
But I think
it-
it's just be like doing this more. I'll get more comfortable, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like one of the things that I'll do is typically before I start an interview, if I know I'm interviewing something on Tuesday, I'll shoot an email to whoever that is, like, hey, here's some of my thoughts. What are your thoughts? I said it to
Yeah.
you. Is there anything in particular that you wanted to hit? Is there any point that you really wanted to focus on that we were talking about today? And so I'll try to make sure that I can, my job is to get as much information as I can myself But if there is a particular thing that they want to get into or an event that they have coming up, if it's something new that they've done, if you're talking to farmers, this is something new that they've done to the farm. Oh, I've always thought about doing that. Can we talk about that for a little bit? Because now that's information for you. That's beneficial to you. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Anytime you guys want me back.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Tomorrow? Just kidding.
Yeah. All right. Make sure you like, subscribe, share it out. Kev, you got to hit the foghorn button.
It's the
Send it.
Thanks for coming out, Kevin. You're a really nice guy.
Here's a new one. Oh, snap.
Let's hear the heck back.